listening to the Project Grow Show. I'm Adrian Boysel, and boy, do I have an exciting episode to talk to you guys about today, and we're going to talk about delegating. I'm actually here with the very talented Mr. Salas. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Yo, what up? Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be on the show.
Absolutely. So give everybody a little bit about your background and tell them who you are.
Yeah, so my name is Frank Salas. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I go by the name of the talented Mr. Salas here on social media. I've been self-employed since I was 20. It's been a while, so about 12, 13 years in the game now. I currently employ 64 people. All of those people work 100% remotely. I have very strong operations. These very strong operations fuel my other businesses. So over the years, I've had every experience that you can with every type of employee, whether in person, remotely. I'm really good at spotting out workflows, identifying workflows, and just helping people like you, people who are listening to this, people who have a business that are really good at something, but they really suck at like the business administration, the operations, the implementation, amazing ideas, but actually getting things done. That's where a lot of people are challenged, and that's where I was. And I went through a long path of skilling up on operations, delegation, but more importantly, communication, and communication as an entity, not person-to-person communication, but hey, this is a business. This business has certain standards, and this is what we're looking for from everybody who joins this team. If you join this team and you put on this jersey, we're not coming for second place. We're not coming for third place. We're coming for the trophy every day, every season, every practice, all the time. If you're not okay with that, McDonald's is always hiring. You can get a job at Subway. But we're looking to hire people that are cool with that. So a lot of people have a lot of struggle there, and I'm speaking solely from experience. And I'm really excited to get an opportunity to break this down as far as the journey of what do I go from being a solopreneur to my first hire to getting my first team. How does this work? How do you let go of things? Because I feel a lot of entrepreneurs, especially if you're an entrepreneur, like this is your baby, this is your first business, or you have business for a long time. A lot of ego comes up, and this is myself included. You just don't want to give things away. Perfect example is when I was selling residential real estate about 5 years ago. I thought that I was one of the best realtors in my marketplace because I could do a CMA, a comparative market analysis. Now, this is techno jargon for my industry. You may have techno jargon for your industry, but I had a very set method, a proven formula, a recipe, a protocol, an SOP, a standard operating procedure on how I did this one thing that gave me a competitive advantage. What I did was I took everything that I went through during that formula, during that process, and I put it onto paper. During this process, I called it downloading my brain onto paper. And what I feel a lot of entrepreneurs really suck at is downloading or putting what their standards are for anything onto a document and then communicating to their teammates that say, hey, this is what I'm looking for in these exact orders. And because people at whatever stage they're in bring on other people, they expect their employees to be mind readers, to have the same standards as they do. Like, this is a job for them. This is your baby, but it's their job. And you got to tell them what it's like to work here. What are your standards? And I see a lot of people, again, myself included, getting very frustrated or used to get really frustrated when I would run into the same problems. Then I started taking responsibility. If I'm seeing the same problems, then I'm the problem. I need to fix it. And then I realized that I'm not the boss here. The customer's not the boss here. The employee is not the boss. The market, the economy is not the boss. The system is the boss.
Yep.
So I am very focused on creating a systems-based business and a systems-based culture in all of my ventures and all of my clients and student ventures as well. So really excited to, chop it up with you here, Adrian.
Yeah,
Thank
me
you so
too.
much.
Absolutely. So, I know you're a wealth of knowledge in this area, and this is the reason why I wanted to do this show today is because I have quite a few people that are solopreneurs that are moving from, single man show to first, second, third employee and really trying to ramp up even during these crazy times that we're in now. And I've been giving them some tips and some advice and things that they need to really consider and books to read. And I think that's probably the first thing I would want to ask you is what's a book that they could read that could give them some foundational principles and skills that would really help them understand what it is to delegate and build a bigger business than just themselves?
I would say first and foremost, stick to the basics. The 7 habits of highly effective people. There's no way that you can run a tight or smooth operation or even improve your current status of your organization without improving yourself first. So it always trickles down from you, and just really understanding those 7 principles and implementing those into your personal life and into your company as a thing, as a dynamic entity, as a dynamic being.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a great one. The Goal. This is it's like a novel. It's a story-based management book. It's about a guy who tells a fictional story about a management plan, and there's so many things on there. Like, for example, he talks about the Boy Scouts, and he says a bottleneck in a business is like the Boy Scouts going on a hike. If you're in a Boy Scout troop and you got a fat kid with you, and you don't want him to slow you down, then you got to give him less weight.
Yep.
You can't give him too many snacks. You can't give him too many water, because he's going to have to go use the restroom. He's just going to slow you down. So you want to put him in the front of the line. You want to have people push him up the hills and things like that. So that's a great book.
Okay.
And then finally, the Checklist Manifesto. It's an insanely boring book. Maybe like get the Audible and like 3x the speed on it, or whatever, or watch a review on it. It's super boring, but it's called the Checklist Manifesto. But it basically says surgeons and pilots and other people like this, they all live and die off of checklists. So it's just like really understanding, okay, when my pilot is going in the air, he has to follow a checklist or we will freaking die. Yep. And like taking that life or death importance and urgency and then implementing that into your business, which gives you money so you can live your life, it's going to give you a lot of really good benefits. So I would start there.
That's beautiful.
Just to start.
And I can back that up by saying that I've started doing some flying lessons and being with pilots and listening to them go through their checklist literally one at a time. I remember at first listening to it going, man, does he really need to do this all the time? Like, he's been flying for a long time, but every time, 1 through 10, they go through the same checklist every single time, making sure this and never skipping one of those steps in the process. And I can say from my experience, that has been a big change for me, and being able to delegate and be able to accomplish what I need to accomplish for the day. Is every day I start off with a checklist. I have it back here on my whiteboard right next to me. There's literally a checklist of things that need to get accomplished. And when you have a checklist to start your day off, you'll find that you're gonna be a lot more effective and a lot more successful, and feel a lot more accomplished at the end of your day by having that checklist done. So I can definitely agree with that in a big way.
100%. And one book that I recently finished, just like in the last few weeks, is called Extreme Ownership.
I've heard of that.
And one of the biggest things that I loved about it, there's 2 takeaways. The first one is that there's freedom and discipline. So your checklist is an example of discipline. If you're committed to that checklist every day, because of that discipline, you now have the freedom of whatever results yield from that checklist. Like, you're not putting BS up on that checklist. You're putting stuff that probably pays you, exactly. Makes you better, puts you in a better position to succeed. So that's kind of where you're coming from. So that's the first takeaway. And the second one was give your people parameters. It was just like a nail in the coffin for me. It's like, give your people parameters. So this book is about a bunch of U.S. Navy SEALs who are in Iraq, and they're doing some really hardcore stuff. And it just talks about their mindset to lead in that kind of environment. So if you can lead in that kind of environment, a lot of things translate into the business battlefield.
Yep.
And so he would give his troops parameters and say, hey, do this, don't do this, everything else in between, you figure it out. I trust you because you're trained and you got the right people. So if you have the right people that are properly trained, ideally by you, or they're trained somewhere else, but then you communicate your standards to them and say, hey, I know you did this stuff over there, but this is how we roll, and we're loving anything you contribute, but this is where we play.
Exactly.
If you can stay in those parameters and then give them the freedom, better things happen. So I really love those takeaways.
I think that's important, and those are great books, man. So thank you for those recommendations. I think it's something that I have to do for myself. I do audio books all the time, and that's how I crush through books. And I just absorb it better that way. So whatever method is, if it's actually reading or if it's audiobooks, you got to make it happen. You got to get in there and add that to your checklist, if you will. Having a checklist on a daily basis is going to make a dramatic difference between having a successful day and having a day that you feel like you didn't really make it a win. So definitely take that advice. That's really good advice. Now, something I wanted to ask you about is we're both branding guys. We both understand branding and the importance of it. And I think it's important to understand that even in delegating, your brand is critically important. A lot of people think the branding is customer facing and that it's just a visual element. But in reality, we know that branding is look, sight, sound, touch, smell is a lot more than that. And it's not just about your clients' viewpoint on and how they view you, but how your team, and as you start to grow your team, how they view and the cultures that you build. And there's culture can go really, really deep. I mean, there's hours that we could talk about just culture and daily culture, weekly culture, monthly culture. But I think understanding your core values and communicating those effectively to the people that are on your team is critically important. So I'd love to chat with you a little bit about that and maybe some of the core values, because this is a faith-based business show. So a lot of the ways that I do business and how I treat people in my moral compass, regardless of what faith background you have, plays into what I do on a daily basis and how I treat my people and how I treat my clients and things like that. So I'd love to hear a little bit from you on that and kind of what your thoughts are.
Yeah, no, great points. And I totally agree. So the first thing that I do when starting a business is a company Bible. It's like, hey, this is how we roll. This is how we operate. These are the 10 laws of the commandments, whatever. In my real estate business, I was selling residential real estate. So houses, condos, lots sometimes, but to people, consumers, not investors.
Yeah.
Regular people that need a place to live or want to build a house on the lot. And I would work with a lot of admin help. So I would hire people from countries that were, in developing nation status, second and third world. I'd pay them, $100 to $300 a week. They'd work for me. And they would respond to my emails. They would respond to my text messages. And they would even make phone calls on my behalf. And because we were selling property in Texas, which in Texas specifically, there's a lot of manners. Yes, sir. No, ma'am. Please, thank you. Would you kindly? May I please? These kinds of things. So in order to make our clientele feel more comfortable in dealing with our offshore staff, everybody always started the conversation off with howdy. Like, howdy, Adrian. It would just always be howdy. And it was just like a little thing that would kind of get that know, like, and trust factor.
Yep.
Also, when they would leave text messages or emails or even faxes, they would have little stars on the end that says, you're receiving wonderful service from talented VA for virtual assistant, and then their name. And so because I'm the talented Mr. Salas, and because one of my stars is the emoji, one of my emojis is the stars, like that further says, okay, like I know this is an extension of Frank. I know this is not Frank, but I know it's an extension of him.
Correct.
So really getting what are your core values? How do you believe? What are some sayings? Things like that into your company Bible. And then just like the Bible's got stories. Your company Bible needs stories too. Like I like to put, wins and losses in our company Bibles. Smart. This is why we confirm on on-demand projects for 1,000 t-shirts. If we don't do this, then we're going to lose out $6 a shirt. This is a $60,000 mistake. Boom, boom, boom. And this is the story of why we never do this in the book of whatever.
Yep.
And on the flip side, successes, wins. This is how we do referrals. These are the results of referrals, so on and so forth. So take both wins and losses as a company. Again, your company is a being. It's an entity. It evolves like you do, emotionally, mentally, financially.
Yep.
And so as that progresses, you want to add to that character, add to that lore. So we have inside of one of my businesses, we have like rules or laws or amendments for certain people.
Yeah. And
depending on the case, you may or may not want to be one of those people that are names. You could be famous for a really good reason or famous for a really bad reason. You never know.
That's true. Yeah, no, I think that's important, and that's how I do things, and the values and the things that I care about, like mentorship has become a really big one for me because it's just made such a huge impact on my life. So I make sure that I communicate with my team whenever we're meeting, and just in my previous meeting that I had before this was, hey, if there's somebody out there that you can mentor, that you can help, just be a friend. I'm not asking you to go become some, incredible mentor and be their parent. We're just asking for somebody to just be a support to one another and encourage people to support each other and disciple. Really, it's discipleship, but in the secular world, it's mentorship, and it's crazy how much of an impact mentorship has had in my life and what a difference it's made. I mean, I literally wouldn't be here talking to you today if it hadn't been for the mentor that, I have this office with here. So it's incredibly powerful to have a mentor. And so that's one of the core values that I have that I incorporate into my company is like, hey, who can you go out there and support, encourage, be a friend to, and lend your experience and knowledge to. We should be open. We're supposed to be rivers, not dams. So that's just the mindset that I want everybody on my team thinking. So I just wanted to make sure that that's part of what people that are listening to this can understand is it's important to share your core values and what makes you tick and what gets you out of bed every day and incorporate that into your company culture, because when it comes to hiring and bringing on other people who don't mesh with that culture, that is going to be one of your first indicators whether they're going to be a fit for you long term and whether you're going to waste time or not bringing them into your company and taking that big leap of faith that it takes to go from a solo entrepreneur to having your first employee.
100%. I couldn't agree more. I also would like to add a slightly different viewpoint, maybe just a different way to think of it.
Yes.
So I love how you say mentorship, and I'm totally 100% into this, except for the cons of mentorship. So the cons of mentorship, it's one-to-one, which is also the pro of mentorship. It's a one-to-one thing. Let's say in a business sense, you are mentoring somebody inside of your organization.
Okay.
When you mentor that person inside of your organization, and if they leave, that time and energy that you put into them, it's going to go with them. And, good for them. They get to, go on their journey or whatever. But when you think about the big picture in your business, as a business, solely speaking from the business aspect, what I like to do is instead of mentor a person, I like to mentor the system. If I'm doing a mentor meeting, I will record it. I will put it into our company database, our shared knowledge database, and I will have coaching calls. And I'll say, hey, I'm on the phone with Adrian, our creative marketing director for this campaign. This is what went on. This is what went great. This is what we could improve. This just didn't work at all. And maybe we'll try some of these again, but these for sure we're not going to do. And this is what we learned. Boom, boom,
That's
boom.
Great.
This is on the field feedback. This is what he learned. Boom, boom, boom. So if Adrian ever leaves, hey, Adrian, dude, thanks so much, homie. Really appreciate you helping me beef up the system. Good luck on all your things. Boom, boom, boom. And now it's a win for Adrian. It's a win for me. And it's a win for the business. So that's just a slight little tweak. Still on the same wavelength, but just that little thing that a lot of companies aren't doing to just never have to repeat. There's like dude, like if you haven't hired somebody, like it's like having a kid, like you have to raise them, and it's not a bad thing, but like it takes things out of you.
Well, what's funny is, and we'll get a little lighthearted on this one. I think if you compare it to dating, right? I don't know how many times you've dated somebody, but in dating, you get to know somebody, and maybe you're in a long-term relationship, a year, 2 years, and during that time, you tell them your stories, you tell them your life, you tell them the great things that have happened to you, the bad things that have happened to you, you give them some of your skeletons in your closet, and then you end up finding out that you guys aren't a great fit, and then you go about your own way. Then the next person you meet, you got to start all over again, and you tell them your wins, and you tell them your losses, and by the time you're like to your third or fourth person, I think you get to that point where you're just like tired of telling the same story over and over again. And I think that's even what happened with my wife and I, is I told the story a number of times, and by the time I got to her, she's like, oh, I didn't know that about you. And I'm like, I didn't tell her that? And I've told this so many times, I guess I just forgot to even mention that. And so I think it can kind of play into the business thing too, with what you're talking about, is you mentor the system and you share those things with the system, and then you're not having to repeat yourself and do that redundancy over and over and over again, because that can get frustrating, and then you end up leaving somebody out in the future because you just don't want to keep sharing the same things and things get missed.
And then that's the ego, man. Totally agree with you, man. That's the ego coming through. So a lot of people, I've already done this. You haven't done it with that person. You haven't done it to the system. Blame yourself. Take full ownership. And that's a big one, man. That's something that I had to accept responsibility for, because I've built up big teams of 8, 10, 12 people. That's big for me. Not like on your level, but like in my office with my team, coming in every day, weekly, daily meetings, like staff meetings and conference room meetings and all of that. I've had the whole operation, $30,000, $40,000 a month in payroll, all of that. And going from that to going what I am at now of having everybody pretty much remote has been a dramatic change.
but I've learned to take responsibility for the failures throughout those years of having those people and bringing them on. And at the end of the day, you can say, well, they didn't do this and they didn't do that, and they just walked out on me in the middle of the day. Well, if you had your systems in place and you had things in place, then you wouldn't have gone through that hard time when they left. You would have been ready for that. And so those are things that I had to take responsibility for along my journey of learning how to scale a business. Is you think that people are going to be loyal to you and they're going to stick around and they're going to be invested into the thing like you are, but that's just not the reality of life, and definitely not the reality of business. So I think there's some gold nuggets for people to pull away from that, is just understanding that you have to be ready for the unexpected. Expect the unexpected. So
I totally agree, man. I totally 100% agree.
So I had a couple questions I want to get to with you that I think are really great for somebody is, and I wonder if I should start with hiring first and some of the things that you look for. Let's do that. What are some of the things that you look for that are kind of red flags for you when you're going to hire somebody?
So here's what's cool. So I've got an outsourcing agency, and we hire globally. Mm-hmm. And I created this outsourcing agency for me. I'm very selfish. Because I'm a serial entrepreneur, I always need people. Yep. And because I have high standards, I need people to deliver service to me at the stand. I like my work to come the way that I like it. Yep. It makes sense to me. I've got a lot of things going on, and I just need it done my way. Yep. A lot of people can't hang in that kind of environment. So because I know the environment that I keep, I put my application process very similar to my working environment. So for us, we have a bunch of steps in our application, and there's very meticulous things that they need to do, like the littlest things. Mm-hmm. Like it could be changing font colors, it could be font sizes, things in the subject line, little things like that. Yep. Super tiny, the smallest things.
Smart.
The way they order things, privacy, little things like that. Yep. And I don't look at their resume at all. For example, one of our requirements is to send us a video for a certain amount of time. Okay. Because we hire globally, I don't even know this person can speak English. Yeah. So our recruiter, who runs a recruiting system, they don't even use their brain power to read, because the subject lines, when they come in, if it's not the way we ask, we know they didn't read directions. Yep. When they open it, if there's a few visual cues that will say, oh, this person didn't follow directions, boom, boom, boom. And then we have, we have templates that they use to guide them and say, hey, you failed, please reapply, and read instructions carefully. Yep. And so if someone fails, that's not necessarily a red flag. It's a yellow flag. Yep. But what's even better is if they fail, but they show progress and they continue, I like that guy. I don't care what his resume is. I don't care. But if someone can show me progression, totally, I'll work with that person, because totally, when you have a systems-based business, all you need to do is find people with just enough talent. It doesn't have to be the best talent, yep, but just enough talent to follow systems. And I don't want anybody to think. I'm not paying them to think. Yeah. I'm paying them to run a business. Okay. I would love to leverage their critical thinking skills, but each position is, just like you, its own daily checklist. Yep. Each position in each company has its own responsibilities, its own checks and balances. And I don't ask too much of people. I feel like a lot of employers ask too much for employees. That's like, if you're playing sports, hey, LeBron, I need you to dribble, shoot, steal, assist yourself, score, coach, get the water, pack the planes, and handle all the payroll and sell tickets. Impossible. Yeah. Impossible. LeBron, get out there, shoot some points. If you're guarded, shoot it to this guy. Yep. That's your game plan. Totally. No, that's super smart, and I think that was a really, really valuable tip and area to point out in all this, because I think even myself, I've been guilty of putting too much on somebody, and as time has gone on, I keep taking things away and stripping it down and making it simpler and simpler. And I think there's two sides to it. I mean, how important is it to be versatile and have some abilities to be able to jump in and help when needed, when you see something? If you're just part of the team and you notice something, being proactive versus being reactive, I think is really important. So I think there's a level of that I require from all of my team.
that versatility of being able to kind of look out and see around the bend as you're driving, having a lookout partner, and be able to say, hey, they don't necessarily need to be the one that does it, but being able to just watch out for the company and say, hey, I saw this, or I heard this, or I read this article. I think this is something we should be looking out for. And everybody should have some sort of a mindset wrapped around, like, we're all looking out for each other. There's got to be that culture in mind. We're a team, just like, on a basketball team, there's got to be that team mentality, because otherwise you're going to run into the reactive type of person where every time you have something that does happen, you're like, oh, and then they just frantically have to go and scramble, and then they're stressed and they don't perform and they miss details and things like that happen. So how have you kind of lined that up in your systems, if you will, to have somebody be versatile in their job description? Like, what are your expectations with that?
I'm glad you start off with that word expectations, because first off, I have my expectations as an employer extremely realistic. This is my baby.
Yep.
This is how they pay their rent.
Yep.
If my company goes out of business today, it'll suck for me. Next week, by Monday, they will have a new job or they will be collecting unemployment.
Yeah.
Point blank, period.
Yep.
I will not expect somebody in that situation to come to my business and say, hey, Adrian, I know I'm the graphics guy here, but there's a new graphic designer tool. I've already tested it out. I put my credit card on there. I got the trial on there.
Yep.
And there's this new project management thing. I think we should check it out. Me and the other people got together on our own, and
Yep.
we started doing our own studies on this. That's completely unrealistic.
Yep.
Even like I would only reserve that to a chief marketing person,
Okay.
and realistically making 60,000 with bonuses or more,
Yep.
or at least $100,000 a year on a salary to have. Like, I wouldn't, unless that's being met, I wouldn't even have that expectation.
Totally.
For something like that. So
Okay.
for me, especially, I hire people from developing nations where, speaking of expectations, I'm in Colombia right now. In Texas, when I turn on the hot water, it's scorching hot. It's at 98 degrees all the time, or whatever it is. When I come here and I say, hey, does it have hot water? They're like, yeah, it has hot water. You turn the hot water on, you wait, you go boil an egg, you come back, it's lukewarm, you go watch an episode of Friends, you come back, it's warm, you go for a jog, you come back, and now it's hot.
Yep.
That's the standard of hot water. And it's the same thing, it's just two different standards. So for me, I never had those expectations, and I always clearly communicate, even the being proactive.
Yeah.
I have to, in my training that we do, this is for American or second and third or anybody, we have a training on being proactive versus being reactive, and you've got to communicate that. So that's one of our things, is communication. If I'm in your company, Adrian, and you give me a directive,
Yep.
a suggestion, I'm going to communicate back to you so you understand that I understand the words coming out of your mouth. I'm not just going to say yes.
Yep.
Sure, Adrian. Yes, you got it, sir.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
when you work with like overseas people, all they do is tell you yes. Yes, I can do, Adrian.
Yep.
Anything you want. Yes, that it's rude for them to tell you no, and they don't want to displease you. So they're
Yep.
just going to tell you yes, even if they don't understand you. So I always say, hey, Adrian, do you mind bouncing that back to me? In your own words, what's going on here? Or I'll stop in the middle of a meeting
Smart.
and I'll say, Adrian, what's going on right now? They're like, blah, 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 boom, boom. So, and another thing that you mentioned is the staff meetings. All of our meetings are typed and all of our meetings are timed.
Yep.
So we have a 15-minute meeting and a 30-minute meeting. The 30-minute meeting is for executives. The 15-minute meeting is for the staff. There's an agenda. If you want to put something on the agenda, you got to follow a process. We have a timer. We have somebody who facilitates the meeting, and we have people dedicated to their own departments. Hey, we've got Adrian from the creative team. He's got 3 minutes. We've
Cool.
already sent out the documents before. Adrian, you're up.
Perfect.
Boom, 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 boom.
Beautiful.
And it's quick, quick, quick. I don't want to be on calls with these guys. I don't want to be on phone call on emails with these guys. I don't want to be on text threads. Let's meet up. You know what the deal is. We can Slack or communicate in real time on whatever platform that you feel is valuable. And just that's the workflow where you focus on the work and not like, oh, here's my meeting and here's my minute and look at me show off about this thing. Let's show off the results. Let's show off the work. Let's show off the implementation. It's
Yep.
a different breed.
Totally.
And if you can facilitate that vibe, you get a lot more things done.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I think that's really, really smart. So then, and you kind of grazed on this in the beginning of that part was if they don't meet the expectations and you give them a chance to run at it again, which is a big deal for for a lot of people. Some people are a lot more lenient and will give even more chances, which I got to admit that's been me, as I've given a lot of chances to people over the years, and in most cases too many chances. And then there's some people that are very you screw up once, you out. I'll just find somebody to replace you, and don't really value, as far as I feel, the relationship and the person as much when you take that one shot approach. What's worked for you? How do you feel about someone making mistakes and giving them chances?
Oh, I love it. I encourage failure. So we have posters internally in our documentations, on our contracts, on our employee offers, on our recruitment offers, on our paperwork, on our recruitment paperwork, on our testimonial sites for employees. It says fail, first attempt in learning. We, in our training, purposefully create situations for them to fail, to see how they communicate pressure, time delays, disappointment. Like a lot of these people, especially if you're hiring globally like we do, they don't want to disappoint. And they've never once told one of their bosses or direct report, I didn't do this. And we forcefully put them in situations where they just can't. And it's funny to see them like break through that, because we say, hey, it's safe to fail here. Anybody who's listening to this and you're employing people, it's like raising a kid. You have to create a safe environment for them. Wow. If they feel safe, they can go experiment. They can go make things better. If it doesn't work out, you give them the proper feedback, that's appropriate. The more gentle, the better. But some people, sometimes, not all the time, need to get their head bit off. Like me, sometimes I need to get my head bit off. I'd be like, you know what? Yeah, man, that was not anywhere near success. But after you bite their head off, say, okay, what's next? How do we build from there? So it's like when you spank your kid. I don't know if kids get spanked these days, but after you get spanked, typically good parents are, all right, how do we avoid the spanking next time? What do we learn from this? Just talk it out with them.
Yeah. I mean, I know we live in the free trophy generation now, where there's no spanking or even yelling at kids anymore. So things have definitely changed. So I think that there's got to be some sort of structure and discipline there. That's just my old school, the way I was brought up and raised. I think there's got to be some level of accountability. And I like that you've implemented that into your system, and that you accept failure, which is really, really important. What happens when someone that you hire, I'll just say they're in an upper management position, right? They're on the higher end of what they're getting paid out of all your people, and they screw up, not once, not twice, but maybe 3 times, and each of those times it has a dramatic impact, like losing a client, or somebody else deciding to not want to work for you anymore on the team, or something that is a pretty significant blow to the business. What's your approach with that?
I would literally take a step back and say, the revenue that we lost versus the potential revenue that this person could bring, is it worth it? And if it is, I roll with them. I tell them, look, you cost us this much. This is the situation. I'm letting you know that if this continues to happen because of this same reason, I'll have to find somebody else. But I want you to go out there and still do that. Like if they hesitated and we failed, then I would say, hey, be more decisive. And if they were decisive and failed, I'd be like, great decision making. I love how you didn't leave it to limbo. You took action. That's all I can ask. Now we can learn, boom, 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 and then invest in them again. So like even the management, like I want to do that. But there is a certain point where people show you who they are. I tell people all the time, like I keep my first mentor call 3 to 5 minutes. From those 3 to 5 minutes, if they show me that they can take what I said and have progress, I'll give them 5 to 7 minutes. If they show me again, I'll give them 7 to 10.
Nice.
If they continuously show me again, all right, I'll do 10 to 12, 10 to 13. Then I might have regular 15-minute checkups, every month, every 6 weeks. Nothing. Okay. I got a lot of people. I wish I could do more.
Right.
But really, I like to understand what are their goals, what are their challenges. I'm realistic with them. I'm like, I'm not Adrian, I know you're not going to work here forever, man, but realistically, man, level with me. Where does this fit into your life? Oh, Frank, I'm going to school. Great question. I got about 3 years left. All right, cool. Yeah, tell me about your bills, man. Who are you responsible for? I pay for my little girl, my wife, this and that. Just like understand what's going on in their world, so you can win together.
That's great. And so if somebody tells you that they eventually want to start their own business and they want to start their own digital marketing or their own outsourcing business. What's your response, and do you treat that any differently than if it was just somebody that said, yeah, I want to work and do this job for the next 10 years?
I lost you. I just came back, man. Something about 10 years?
So how do you treat a situation where someone that you're initially, when you ask that question, how does this fit in with your life? And they say, well, I just want to gain some experience so I can go start my own outsourcing agency, or I can go start my own digital marketing agency. Do you treat that situation or that person, or put them into a different line of work, or do anything differently with that person than you would with anybody else?
I would sit them down and say, this is a really hard thing to do. And if you really want to do that, it would really benefit you to do this at a very high level for the next 2 to 3 years. And, if that's really true, you can see what it takes. And then, I would offer them a career advancement.
Yeah.
By the way, me personally, I have a career advancement for all my staff. Once they reach a certain level, like entry level, I'm like, nah, if you show me more, okay, let's go more.
Exactly.
But if you're just here for the check, I'm just here for it's a transactional deal. It's cool.
Beautiful.
Not everybody needs to be committed. I totally get it.
Yep.
So, but the people that are, I'll have that chat with them.
Because that's something I've run into a number of times now, as I've hired people and I teach them Google ads, and then they go off and they're like, oh, I'm going to start this junk hauling business, and then next thing you know, they're incredibly successful doing junk hauling just using Google ads. Or, hey, I hire a web design guy, and then next thing you know, he learns what he learns from me, and then goes out and starts his own web design company. So I have people that stayed with me at that time, this was about 4 years ago, that stayed with me for 6 months, and then I had people that stayed with me for 2 years. But I felt like I kept bringing people into my business that were just wanting to learn what I was doing so they could go off and do it themselves. And so I was putting so much into them, I was investing so much, but I wasn't really getting back out what I was hoping for, which was a long-term relationship. It's like bringing on a client and then them only staying with you for 90 days or for 6 months, and you're like, man, I did all this work to get this client, and now they're gone in 6 months. Like, what was the point of that?
That's the game, bro. That's the game. You don't own anybody, dude.
No.
That's true. Nobody owns you. So just like you said, in dating, I'm just casual right now. I'm just dating. Hey, I'm not trying to get married right now, but I could use a girl or a guy for the next 2 to 3 years. Yep. All right, cool. I'm down with that plan. Yeah. You just be transparent with everybody.
Totally.
And at the end of the day, I would offer that person an entrepreneur position and a career advancement way to get there. And once they see the amount of work and capital that it takes to be successful at a high level, they may be like, yo, this is crazy. I want to stay, and be like, you know what? Why don't I give you a piece of the action? Like, what you want is ownership. What you want is freedom. All right, show me what you're good at. Maybe you could be the CTO, this kind of person.
Yep.
And one thing that I noticed is a lot of ego, and I'm just picking on you for an example, but
Good.
I thought the same thing. One of my first business was a spray tan business, an airbrush tanning business.
Yep.
We had our own methodology and whatnot. I had my own school of thought, my own certification.
Yep.
And the people that I hired, I made them sign, do not compete, non-disclosure, blah, blah, blah. But still, how enforceable is something like that when something's on you and IP? It's really hard to prove.
Totally.
And am I really going to sue, a beautician or an esthetician or something like that?
No.
Not really, So what I did is I just committed to the system, and whatever time that I spent with them, I taught that guy Google Ads. And I would rather say, I created a system on how to run Google Ads. This guy came through it, and now he's doing successful things. I can bring on somebody else and just be like, yo, maybe, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a job? Yeah, man, I'm just looking for something part-time. Perfect.
Yep.
Cool.
Well, I think that question right there is a gold nugget that you asked, is how does this fit into your life? Where do you see this being? That's such a great question. And one of the books that it reminds me of is Great Leaders Ask Great Questions, right? It's 100%. A phenomenal book. And so
read that book.
You've got great questions, and that's the one thing I notice. And the thing that if people are listening to this, they'll hear over and over again is you always come back to your systems. And I love that. That is
I'm
the
not
key.
The boss.
Yep. The system is the boss. So that's probably what I should title this whole entire podcast episode, is The System is the Boss. I think this is great, man. So one of the last things I wanted to ask you is time expectations. How do you determine how long a task should take? So let's just say I have branding project X, and I sell this same branding project, and I have this designer on it and that designer, and one designer is able to do it in 16 hours, but the other one takes 22 hours or 28 hours. How do you adjust do you adjust your pricing? Do you adjust your process? How do you relate that into your system?
So those are realistic examples that are probably a lot of agency owners experience on a regular basis. I used to experience that as well. And the reason it takes so long is because when you're working with freelancers or even people that say they're working with you, they're working with other projects. They're working with you and 2 to 5 other people on average. So, and then they're trying to eat, you can't blame them, trying to get things done. And so what I do to combat that is in my agreement, we have a screenshot monitor that they must use. It's done every 2 minutes.
Wow.
And there's an activity clause on there. So if they're inactive for 2 minutes or more, they get clocked out. So I pay somebody. So one person in my company, her only job is to look for screenshots. And what they're looking for is they're looking for Skype messages, Facebook messages, Instagram, WhatsApp, YouTube, personal things, little things like that. And it's just like, when they know they're being watched like that, it's really difficult for them to do other things, and it forces them to be very focused. More creative people typically aren't the most focused or professional.
True.
And they're really genius, really brilliant at what they do, and it just takes them so little to get so much done. And what I found is, like, once you put them on the screenshot and they know they're being watched, man, the productivity, dude, is
the
just
pressure.
And so for me, I work with a global workforce. And so, for example, the average graphic designer, average kid out of college, maybe a year of experience, maybe 50 grand, not including payroll taxes, unemployment insurance, benefits, Medicaid, dealing with them, housing them in your office, all that stuff, bonus,
Been
Christmas,
there, done that.
Unemployment insurance, severance packages, all those things like that. That person costs you 50 grand minimum, probably like 60 or 75. For me, a graphic designer costs me anywhere from $100 to $300 a week. That's about $5,000 to $12,000 a year.
Okay.
So I will take those kinds of people who are more grateful for an opportunity, who are less distracted, and who don't have Kim Kardashian and Kanye West saying, you need a side hustle, you need to do this, you need more, you need a Bentley, you need this. Very humble, very hardworking people, really good at what they're doing, very thankful, very appreciative, very focused on their source of income to feed their family. Because they're in survival mode. They're not in, whatever, I'll just file for unemployment. Like, there is not an option like that for them.
Correct.
And they're going to work harder. So that's who I choose to engage with for the most part. And it's a game changer once you adopt those things. Like, I guarantee you, if you switch up either the people and or your system, the productivity is going to go through the roof, and you're going to start to see, man, I'm getting more projects done in faster time. And if you work with people from developing nations, you're going to see more profit, more meat on that bone, and you get to do way more things with that.
Absolutely. And I think there are a ton of people out there that are very systems minded, but the creative people that are like me, I just, processes and systems are just not my strength. You give me something to design or to create or to sell or to pitch or to an idea or a vision, a strategy, things like that, I love that. But when it comes to developing systems and processes, it's just not my strength. So for the other graphic designers and marketing people that are out there that have that same creative gift but are not systems oriented and don't have that analytical brain, you have a perfect solution for that. And so for me, I mean, I know we've even talked about it a little bit, is implementing some of the processes. Do you help companies come in and actually develop their systems and processes to help them build that? Is that something that part of your program?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that's really easy. Like, especially if you're creative, you're tricking yourself right now. You don't own a business, you're self-employed, you own a job. And once you hire people to do the things that people hire you for, so if you're a graphic designer and you're getting paid for graphic design, if you hire a graphic designer, if you secure graphic design jobs, and if you give that graphic design job to the graphic designer, you now own a business, a system that works whether you're there or not. Maybe you contribute to it, but its capacity is not on you as a human being. You now have other people. So absolutely. One of the things that I really love to do is create teams around people. And the most important thing to do is to start off with an executive assistant. You said it best. You're a creative. You don't really want to be stuck in the details of a business. And if you want to stay in your zone of genius, and if your cash flow is doing creative projects, hire an executive assistant. That person's going to manage your calendar. They'll do lead generation for you. They'll follow up with people on your behalf, your invoicing, your paperwork, following up with old leads, reaching out to old clients. Hey, I know the coronavirus thing is out right now. Hey, what's your promotion like for that? Do you have any promos going out for that? Boom,
Yep.
boom, boom.
Yep. That's beautiful.
So,
man.
yeah, that's something somebody wants to get set up. I did want to show them this because this is what we like to set up. This is what's called an HQ, headquarters. And so I know creative people are very visual.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can see this, this is kind of where we start off.
Okay.
So this is you. You are the entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
This is the well-rounded, team. Typically, you work with an executive assistant.
Yep.
Now that's a junior senior partnership.
Okay.
As a senior partner, if you're the creative, you handle all the creative work. As a junior partner, they handle all the admin work. But let's say you get really busy. Now you can start to add a whole team. This person manages these team members. These team members never speak with you because that would be a headache.
Yep.
You want to make sure you have a strong system that is communicated to this person that's also communicated to these people. These people follow the chain of command and report to this person. This person consolidates their reports and makes your life easy and say, hey, admin's up to this, customer service up to this, boom, boom, boom.
Yep.
Each one of these people has their own daily checklist. They have their own protocols. They have step-by-step instructions that allows them to be successful. You've given them parameters. I need this done within these parameters, within these times to these standards. Can you do the job?
Wow.
And that's how you start to build a team in every department in your business. And remember that all business is just three parts. So business is three parts. It's marketing, operations, and finance. That's the only three parts of every business.
What about
Everything
sales?
else, that's marketing.
Okay. So you
Everything.
lump those in together. Yeah, because I've read about a half a dozen books now that always talk about five, and I feel the same way as you. Is I feel like they split them up and make them a little bit more divided up, but they put sales, operations, and then like you have not just operations, but like the actual execution of it. I've heard them add execution and sales into that besides just operations. Operating and managing it, but then you have the actual team that implements, the implementation side.
And they're right. This is just the big picture. They're
big
totally
picture.
right. So
Yep.
sales would go here. Sales and marketing are cousins.
Yep. Oh, totally.
And this would have their own team.
Yep.
And then we have branding here.
Yep.
You actually have your
Advertising.
social
Yeah.
media buying, like everything sections out. But at the end of the day, it all boils down to marketing.
Smart.
So that's the cool thing about business is you can build these teams around any one of these there. Right now, most people are stuck doing all three parts of their business.
Yep.
Where if they could hand a system over for the marketing and the finance and just focus on the operations, that's what I would start.
Yep.
If you're doing graphic design or web design, keep doing that. Have somebody else here.
Beautiful.
Until you can hire somebody here.
Oh, that's great stuff right there.
So yeah, if this makes sense, if you want to actually make that a reality, create a working environment, just hit me up everywhere on social media at Talented Mr. Salas. I love this stuff. I've been doing this for a decade and a half now, and I wouldn't be able to live the lifestyle that I do if it wasn't for having systems.
Yeah. So what does it look like? How do we get connected with you besides social media? What's your website?
It's talentedmrsalas.com. That's the
Nice.
fastest way to get a hold of me, Talented Mr. Salas. But the fastest way is going to be Instagram.
Okay.
Instagram, that's how we met.
Yeah.
Talented Mr. Salas.
Absolutely. Building some great relationships. You saw a post of mine, and boom, the conversation started, and now look. So. Very
Yeah.
good, very good. Well, I appreciate your time today, man. It's really great. Thank you for sharing just so much of your knowledge and wisdom and experience. And we're definitely going to have to do another one of these, that's for sure, because I think we could talk for another hour at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
So right on. Well, off to the next one, and I'll see you soon.
Ciao.
All right, brother. Later.